Oh my goodness.
Here we are. You've missed us, haven't you?
Oh, it feels good to be missed.
Feels good to be back. Kristen and I are back. We have not done a podcast in quite a moment. And we were just laughing
Yes.
'cause we were like, what do we call this podcast? And we were joking of, do we call this podcast? We haven't done a podcast in a really long time. So this is the podcast where we talk about everything. Or do we call it Holiday Cheer with Natalie and Kristen?
And maybe it's both. Maybe it's both and.
Think both are the same thing.
Um, one of the reasons we haven't done a podcast in a minute is I've been in LA getting up a new production, and that has been full on body, mind, and soul. I always have these dreams, or maybe they're illusions or delusions, that I'll be able to multitask while I'm doing a very big project. And this one I was directing, I co-wrote it, I was producing it with my collaborator, and I was like, oh, uh, it constantly has needs that need to be responded to.
Yeah, that's kind of like the delusion of I'm gonna give birth to the baby and also fold the laundry. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
no, no, it's just that's not gonna happen.
yeah. Just we're gonna focus on the thing that's happening and make sure it gets done. That
Yeah,
train is running.
yeah, but I do think, we sort of do live in an illusion that multitasking is a thing, and it's a thing that is like a source of pride getting good at. Um, However, I don't think certainly creativity was not meant to work that way. And I would argue our bodies were not really designed to work that way either, and there do seem to be consequences to we were just talking about, oh, we could talk about burnout. And that does seem to be the natural consequence of a little too much multitasking, which I think
Yeah.
we live in a world now where people are multi hyphenates and we're doing lots of things. And I know I've been certainly fed the story and wanted to live into the story of like the woman who does it all and the woman who's like a mom and has her career and doing all the things. And there's a seductive, element to that, and it feels exciting, and it feels like a cool thing, and also, boots on the ground, that it's really complicated, and maybe there's a different way to frame what success or what those things might really actually look like.
That is so true. And I love anytime we are reframing success or coming up with our own definitions of it. Just to share, when I arrived in Los Angeles to do this new musical, I came on the heels of doing two other projects. And while I was doing it, I was like, oh, I'm in the flow. I'm letting the universe create through me. I'm just going to relax and allow it to happen. And by the time I got to LA, I like hit a wall and my body was like, I'm exhausted. I am exhausted. And then the musical, which is going great. And I do want to dive into how powerful that has been with community. But just listening to my own body's needs when I first showed up, my body was like, oh, do not pass go, do not collect $200. I need you to lay down for a minute. But the demands were there of, oh, it's time for me to show up and show up in a big way. And I went, oh, I have learned this lesson before that I really can't roll from one big thing into another big thing, into another big thing. And that, how we have seasons in our lives, that's for a reason. And I'll be the first one to talk about how downtime is so important, like that we need that space in order to refuel. And it was really interesting then to watch my mind. And I had to kind of reprogram my thoughts because I felt like there was something deep in me that was like, I need some space. I need a timeout. But I was like, okay, that could happen in late December. Like, but how can I not say it's in the future where I get to rest? And how can I carve out moments wherever I am for these pockets of rest? So I started doing like a mantra that was like, I'm at rest right now. I'm at peace right now. So whatever it is, like if it was driving to the theater, I'm at rest right now because I realized part of the thing that can intensify the burnout is the mental story in the head, right? But if I could get my thoughts to relax, if I could go, "Oh, it's the morning time. I have 10 minutes to meditate before the day starts." Like, where can I find the pockets that so that I can enjoy that there's already rest and downtime that can be built into the day. So that was like it was a real strong curriculum because it would feel like I would wake up and there would be something to respond to, and it'd be late at night and there's still stuff to respond to. And I was like, "Oh, I'm the one that has to make the boundaries. I'm the one that has to put the limits on things."
Yeah. I actually feel like with my actual baby as opposed to your creative baby, I had to really learn this as well because I'm like, wait, I can't rest when she's 18. I have to figure this out, you know? And like the constant cycle. And I almost always feel like I owe an amends to our audience because I do remember there have been past podcasts years ago before I became a mother where we were like, even if you're a mom, you can find 5 minutes in the morning. And I'm like, oh, oh no, you actually can't. Like, I'm so sorry that I perpetuated that lie without knowing. Like, no, actually, from the moment they wake up, you're like, "Okay, like, new diaper, let's do this, let's get dressed, let's brush teeth, let's make lunch, let's get you at the door, let's go to daycare," and, for the moms who just have the baby the whole time, it's like, "Whoa." Like, there are mornings when I've been up since 6 and it's 9, and I go, "Okay, now where am I? Oh, now I can have a cup of coffee," and I'm like, "Those 3 hours of my life, wow." And so in the same way, I've had to really learn how to make the chaos actually feel more like music I'm dancing to and not, some crazy mountain that I'm climbing, and find the ways to actually make it something that can be joyful because one of the most beautiful lessons I think that my kiddo came to teach me is that she has a very different rhythm than me, and she does not wanna go as fast as I wanna go. And it's not like me saying, "I'm here to teach you how to move faster." She's like, "No, I'm here to teach you how to move at a pace that feels more like love."
Mhm.
We do not have to get here at that time. We can get there a little bit later and it's all going to be okay. And we have time to stop and dance. And her new thing is like, no phone, mama. I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay. Yep. Yep. She wants me to be present with her right now. She does not want me to answer that email right now, and this real like recalibration to not always answering I think it's Stephen Pressfield talks about not always answering the call of what's urgent, being really present in my body of what's important. And what's important is rest and peace and getting off of that sympathetic nervous system loop of the to-do list and the overwhelm and how productive one can be, which is a really interesting thing when you're up against I think both of us being overachievers.
Right, and I feel like there's something that is happening in all of the conversations I have about we're relearning how to train our nervous systems that we are safe, right? What does it feel like in my body to feel safe? What does it feel like to trust and to really become present? And in that space, when I'm relaxed and I'm open, solutions can come through, and then I can be available to the present moment and whatever wonderful thing that is here that wants to come through. And it's so interesting to notice how much my energy is part of what I am bringing to everything, right? To like every relationship, to my work, um, to my creativity, and the calibration, the time of like, okay, my there's something inside of me that wants to go real fast, but my body is like, hey, drop in, go slow. What if we detach from this idea or this story or this narrative around everything needs to happen, it needs to happen right now? What if I can just exhale and be here and see what might want to happen?
Mm.
And I find I mean, it just takes a certain amount of awareness to even realize, "Oh, oh, I'm back on that loop. I'm back on that loop. I can take myself off the loop."
Yeah. It's funny that you said that because it's really making me think of even the creative process itself is not a results oriented process. It is a process. It's a process of discovery and uncovering. And it's it's like when a child walks into a room and they just want to see everything and explore everything and touch everything. They're not thinking about what their objectives are, what the things they need to get done and what timeline they need to get it done, right? It's an exploratory process, and it's reminding me I recently had this thought of when I was a kid, my dad had this long roll of paper. Like it's the most giant roll of paper I had ever seen, and I used to love that thing because I would like lay it out the length of the floor and I would cut out pictures from magazines and I would make like these long timelines and these long collages. And what I loved about it was like no matter what I made, there was always like more room to create. There was like more paper. And there was just something that totally activated me about the whole process. And I would sit downstairs in my parents' basement and just like play and craft and collage. And then I kind of, like, jump in timeline and think of those projects I made and then getting the report card and getting the A plus on them or whatever, and that report card moment was kind of like a check off the box, the way when you check off a to-do list, but there
Mhm.
wasn't any fulfillment in it. It was just like, "Cool, whatever, great, yay," but the juice was in that roll of paper and in, like, the creative process itself, so I can imagine how good even like in your show, for example, right now, I can imagine how good it must feel that like the audience is loving it and the reviews are great and there's this beautiful ripple effect going out and it's having this impact and you get to see that. But I imagine the juice of the whole thing has been the years and years, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like 7 years?
No, 17. 17.
17
Yeah,
years
I
of,
met Ben in 2007.
yeah, like idea, what about this? What this? And I'm sure, especially looking back, it's like it's fancy and bells and whistles and fun now, but because of the juice of what that process is. I'm totally projecting that onto your experience, but
Oh, no,
that's
no,
how it
no.
feels to me,
I
like
mean,
the paper roll, you know?
yeah, I love the juices in the paper roll. The juice is in the it's in the exploration. Ben is I really do feel sometimes like I'm the luckiest girl in the world because all of my collaborators are amazing human beings. That like the love they evoke in my heart makes me want to cry. And Ben is just he's so beautiful, right? He loves his family so much. He's such a good composer. And the joy of this project has been actually watching his kids grow up and being at some of these like, tent pole moments in their lives and knowing his wife so well and seeing how they've grown as a family and then figuring out how to take their life events and put them on stage in a way that can be felt. And just that process, I'm like, whoa, it's been it's been this entire process that really is the joy of this project. And getting actually to feel all the love and the intensity and the pain that's inside of their life experience and finding a way to translate that and then make that of service to the community that has been I'm like, "Whoa, that's that's the art form we're doing here." And like what an incredible gift. Like it's gotten to be the gift for me. And so much that we found could only be found through the art of doing. So for example, the play is called It's All Your Fault, Tyler Price. And it's about a family and that has a daughter with epilepsy. And there is a scene in the opening number where she has a seizure on stage. And our choreographer, Max, his niece has epilepsy. Ben lived through his own daughter's epilepsy, and we're trying to figure out how to theatricalize it. Well, the day that we were working on that number, just you could have heard a pin drop in that room. when Ben was talking about his real life experiences, Max was talking about his, the actors were there, everyone was so reverent that it really felt like a sacred moment figuring out how to do this on stage. And at some point we were all crying and we realized that like every day throughout the experience we were laughing and crying. And and Ben and I at one point said, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I've ever cried more in my life." Like every day we're crying. We're just like the biggest saps in the room. Um, but I was like, "Oh, it's the richness of this experience that, you know, before any of the reviews came out, because I like to not think about reviews too much because I kind of I want to think about the people, the audience, but not the reviews. I was just like, whoa, the we already won. We already won because the process was so rich.
Mm.
And that has been, yeah. And you know, I imagine that like how intense the rehearsal process was as well also contributed to sometimes how tired I think Ben and I would both feel coming home. Um, yeah, that it like came and took all of our depths to put this
Yeah.
on stage.
And maybe that's a really interesting point of observation for all of us that, yeah, maybe there is an ability to quote unquote multitask and do all the things when you're doing them all at a certain level. But if you really want to be in the depth of something, in the intimacy of something, in the deep sacred knowing of something, it might require more of you, that it might be an opportunity for inquiry of where we leak our energy towards things or tasks or even people that might not be things that we're really, really here purposefully in our one precious life to really be invested in. And we might ask ourselves, is there something in my life that's really calling me, calling my attention forward, but it would require more of me? And is enough of me available for that thing to call me forward? Because if not, maybe that dream, that purpose, that thing stays a little bit ahead of me because there's not enough of me here available for it.
Oh, this is exactly the conversation I had last night.
Of course it was.
Of course it was. I am here visiting a friend of mine who has invested in some of my projects. And last night we were talking, and he asked me, "How many projects do you have, Kristen?" And I said, "Probably about 15." And he said, "All right, but is there one that like gets your heart?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's definitely one that's like my full on heart project. I'm sure you would know what it is, Natalie." And he's like, "Well, I can tell you this. When someone comes to me and they're pitching me business ideas, I'm not interested in the guy that has 4 or 5 different businesses. I want the guy that has one that he believes in with his whole heart and he's putting everything behind." And I thought I was like, "Oh, this is the conversation I needed to hear," because as I was driving to visit, I was thinking about, okay, how what are my goals for 2025, and how am I going to like arrange what I'm focused on in like quarter one of 2025? And I felt like I was kind of like asking that question. Well, first of ChatGPT, which I find to be like the best personal assistant ever. Um, but when I got here, I was like, oh yeah. So what if I did put all of my juice into the thing that my heart cares the most about? And what came up in my body was, oh, it scares me.
Mm.
Yeah, of course, that's why I want to like keep it a little bit off in the distance. I feel like not quite smart enough yet, not quite brave enough yet, not quite there enough yet. But that's the one that's calling me the most forward. And I realize it's a real gift to and terrifying to organize your life around your heart.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I just felt that drop in. Yeah.
Yeah, what did that bring up in you? I saw it.
Ugh, ugh. Well, I just find, this is making me think of, like, living from the place of the empress, from the archetype, the codes of the Empress are really about, like, she's in the language of the highest and best. And so she when we kinda take on that archetype in our life, it's really like, I am a stand for highest and best, and, like, nothing else will do, right? So it's like no to all the things that are not the heart's desire. And what's really interesting in kinda hearing you talk about your process of this is the shadow of the Empress is the martyr. And what comes up in the martyr shadow is often this glorification, or it's like the right thing to do to put yourself last or to take the crumbs or to and it's almost like a badge of honor. And what we find in exploring the martyr particularly is that often the martyr will pretend that they don't really want what they want, but then
Ooh,
blame the universe that they don't have it.
ooh, 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 that's so
Yucky. It's so yucky,
good.
right? And so I can see that in myself of like, well, like, I'm good. Like, I don't, like, I'm satisfied. Like, or I just want, and I say this to actors all the time. I'm like, are you really asking for what you want, or are you asking for what you think you can get? Because, like, you come in wanting
Mm.
the Oscar, and then at one point you're like, I just want my health insurance. Like, if I could just book enough, you know what I mean? And the dream sort of shrinks sometimes the longer you go at it without seeing the external results that you think you would have wanted when you enter into it. And sometimes I think that's a version of of playing martyr to our own dream, of like convincing ourselves I don't really want it if we do think it's off the table, but then having this secret resentment that the universe hasn't given it to me.
I mean, what would it look like? As we're talking, I just wanna make Empress my word for the year as we go into 2025 and go highest and best and heart at the center. And what would that look like if we all just said, like, "I'm gonna put my heart front and center, and I'm gonna go after the thing I want most, the vision of my life that turns me on the most. I'm saying this and nothing else. And I
Mm.
am going to take full radical responsibility for loving what I love and valuing what I love." Like, that activates me just thinking
It does
about
me
it.
too. It really does me too. And then I'm like, okay, so what's that cost? What's at stake? And it's like, well, I got to surrender the martyr. And it's like, ooh, but the martyr gets me so much stuff. You know what I mean? Like, because the martyr's a bit sneakier than the victim,
Right.
because the victim really believes that they're being victimized. And not to say that's right or wrong, that's just inherent. The martyr kinda knows they're not, but does it anyway. You know what I mean? It's a little more insidious, it's a little more there's more responsibility that needs to be taken inside owning that shadow. Like,
Right.
I have done this, I have done it for a reason, there are ways that it has worked, and I have to be willing to surrender all of that and go, "It's all my fault, Natalie Roy." You know what I mean?
Well,
Like
I think, inside the martyr, I'm thinking of when I play the martyr, there's a little bit of self-righteousness involved
Yeah.
because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
like a payoff of I'm such a good person, right?
Totally.
I'm
Totally.
being good, I'm serving others, like that thing. Um, yeah, and of course, as women, we've been conditioned often to play that supportive role, and we get a lot of applause and, "Oh, aren't you a good girl," when you're playing that supportive role. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
it feels like you're kind of like being bad or rebellious when you center your own heart inside of your own life. Um,
Yeah.
and how, one of the things that hit me, this dropped in a couple weeks, that if we're all connected, right? And I am part of the all that is, I am one with life, that when I am flourishing, right? That's like when the rose garden is flourishing. That's like when the community is flourishing. That's when like everything like self-care is a part of community care because when we're each in a place where we're thriving, there's an overflow, there's a spillover. And it's different than it's when it's sometimes I think in a toxic uh, patriarchy or power centered culture, it can be me over others, right? Like I get I get at the expense of taking away from someone else, right? Which is a totally different paradigm than I'm going to make sure that I am the best version of myself and that I am living a life that ignites me and makes me feel alive because that's what I want for everyone. And I know that we end up mirroring each other, right? We live in a way where like it's that high tide, right? It rises all boats. And so
Yeah.
the part of the job is how can I become the best version of myself as sacred service to the all that is?
And we gotta really get knowing, and this is scientific as well as spiritual, but emotion and energy is contagious. And we all know the feeling of, it actually happened today. Like I left the house and I was, going into the subway and a woman was like going in with her baby stroller at the same time a guy was going out and the guy was all huffy, like, you could have at least let me get out first. And she's like, I have a baby stroller. And then like, that like the next person that each like you could see how there's an opportunity for now, like that grumble, that little storm cloud to go to every person. And then every person that meets that storm cloud gets their own little storm cloud, and it's like you end up having a world and I see it. I see it in the world a lot these days where you see everyone is you see it, that people are in pain
Yeah.
and people don't feel seen and people don't feel heard and they don't feel valued and they don't feel appreciated and they're walking around waiting for someone to have the conflict with because there's so much unease inside. And in the same way that energy can be contagious, and there's been all these beautiful studies in like positive psychology that have been done around this, that uh, if there's a whole bunch of people waiting at an airport for a flight to take off, then they'll have the one person, like the scientist or the person in the experiment, will come and stand with them, and they'll start going, "Oh gosh, oh god," and It's it's some study that within, like, 3 to 7 minutes, 90% of the people in that space will all have the same anxious response, and no one even knows what made that person anxious. Being
Oh,
in the space of the energy, that energy becomes dominant, and it's
sure.
like a domino effect, it's a ripple effect, it's a contagion, it
Yeah.
spreads.
Yeah.
But in the same way, you know, if it's raining and you put someone under your umbrella and they're like, "Oh, that was cute," or like, "I wasn't expecting that from a stranger," like, then that has the same ripple, you know what I mean? And so I think you hear this all the time, like small acts of kindness, random acts of kindness, and I've done this in different ways over time where sometimes I go buy those little like $1 lotto tickets and I put it under people's windshields of their car or like little things where whatever day someone's having, it's like, "Oh no, I got a parking ticket." "Oh, it's a lotto ticket." Like what are those little shifts? And something as simple as kindness, as simple as acknowledgement, as simple as someone dropping into presence with you and being interested in hearing your opinion. Like those little things are also a contagion that can ripple out. And so I am thinking about that in terms of if you are adopting this empress frequency, you're right, it's not just for you, it's highest and best for all. And I am a living embodiment of that frequency. Therefore, that becomes the contagion that people who get to be in my presence experience, right? That has more power than we let ourselves know.
Absolutely. I've been on a little bit of a Kathy Heller kick. She has this new book. It's called Abundant Ever After, and I've been listening to it in my car. And she talks so much about how our energy is our currency, and that anytime anyone is kind of paying you for anything, what the real value is the energy that you're bringing. And it's really plugged me into back into things that I know, but this like radical responsibility of checking in with my energy throughout the day and then being mindful to what's that energy I'm bringing? And I love to say, what would be the most fun energy to bring into this conversation, into this next coffee meeting, into this rehearsal I'm going into? And somehow when I like couch it in fun or in play or in silliness or a little mischievousness, it gives it a little extra like kick. Um, 'Cause then I'm back in that the joy of the exploration, you know? I'm that
Mm,
little kid playing on the roll of paper,
mm.
where I can be surprised in what happens, and sometimes bringing a little bit of a playful energy into something, uh, then it's like someone else in that, you know, what's contagious can bring it back to me, and now we're jamming.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no better feeling in the world than like someone starts laughing and then you start laughing and then you both can't stop laughing. You know what I mean? Like that feeling
Mhm,
of it does. It
mm,
does. And one thing I've been thinking a lot lately, and it's similar to what you're saying about this like childlike joy element of it, because I do get to be around a little person all the time. And so I am really present to, like, silly joy and awe and wonder really on the regular. Like, it's always available, it's always on the table, and I'm, like, the serious one getting stuff done, and she's having all the fun, right? But I get to really be in the presence of it, and it does draw it out of me just really organically. It is the more dominant emotion, right? Like, and just the things that she's starting to say now are just, like, hilarious. I'm like, "Where is she coming up with it?" It's so fun and silly, but I was thinking about this because she's my forward, right?
mhm.
She's my lineage forward. And what I've been thinking a lot about is that oftentimes when we sit and think, what do I want? Then we're asking that question from the information we have that is based on who we have been and what we have experienced thus far. So it's never going to be accurate. It's not actually what I could be. It's not actually what I could have. It's not even I'm not even asking for like there are things available on the menu I don't even know yet. So I don't know how to ask for them because I've never experienced them yet. I can only ask for something as good as of what I've experienced thus far or what I might imagine to be possible. And so when I look at her and I look at sort of what's possible in the future or like when I sort of source what I think I want from future possibility as opposed to past possibility, it's like there's a whole different menu on the table. You know what I mean? And I think that kids sort of come in to show us that the pathway to that is different than the striving and hustling that has got us where we are because they're not playing that game.
Yeah, that is so true, and as you say that, like, what drops in is, what if we bring that childlike wonder and joy and exploration of not knowing what's next? There's a whole new world that's about to be created, as we also hold that empress energy of heart highest and best. And
Yeah.
the place where those two meet of I am going to center my heart and ask for the highest and best. And also, I have no idea what's coming. It's all new. It's all exploration. It is play. And from that point, I am meeting each day differently. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm like the energy that I'm bringing is one of excitement and high standards because I know who I am.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the energy of like, uh, you know how Coco Chanel says before you leave the house, take off one thing?
Hmm.
It's like before you leave the house, like what are you taking off? What are you putting on? You know what I mean? Like standing at the gateway of whatever this day gets to be, whatever this next moment gets to be, this email I'm about to send. It's like, how am I embodying that heart open lived experience? And is there something I got to take off to do that? Is there something I got to put on to do that? You know?
Yeah, and as you say that, I think about, like, obviously, we know all the old systems are crumbling. We're gonna get to watch some systems fall down. They're already happening. We're looking around and we're going, "Okay, things aren't working, right? Healthcare system's not working, politics not working, Broadway economic models not working. And as things start to crumble and fall, and we're going to see this all over the place, there's something new that's being born. And I feel really strongly that the new thing that's being born comes from inside of us. We've never lived it before because it's never been. And so if we can all think of there is something new that's being born right now in my heart, in my life, in my relationships, in the career that I have, I haven't seen what is possible, where it's going. It's taking me somewhere brand new. And then if we can meet each day with what do you look like? What do you feel like? What's this new place? And I keep feeling like our bodies tell us where to go and what to do by the messages that they give us. And a part of listening for this new thing that is being born comes from this deep somatic listening to body signals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I could not agree more with that. Yeah, it's an inner game. And I think too, we want to be very mindful of what we make concrete in our thoughts and in our systems. Like, in the same way it's dangerous when you're with a person and they say, well, this is just the way I am. In the same way, that's a dangerous way of thinking and being. Systems, this is just the way it is. No, it isn't. It's the way it's been. It's not the way it is. It's the way it's been. And we want to be very mindful if we have thoughts about people, about systems, about ourselves, that we lock in and we freeze and make a certain way, then that means those things can then only show up the way we have concretized them in our systems. But if we keep it fluid, then it can just be the log in the river that's going by, not the dam. You know, it's like, oh, that's what that was then. I wonder what it is now. I wonder if there's a new possibility. Oh, up until now, my body has felt this way. Up until now, I have felt this way about myself. Up until now, I have felt this wasn't possible for me. Up until now, I've had problems finding a man. Up until now, my projects don't sell. Up until now, I felt on the outside looking in. But I'm willing to let it all be fluid because now is a new moment, and there are new possibilities as long as I release any sort of freezing or making concrete, making solid what has been, then there gets to be this space of like, oh, I wonder what it's going to look like now.
Yes, if I stop going into the past, digging up the past and projecting it on the future, if I allow there to be an empty space, and in that empty space there can be limitless possibility, then I get to meet the new thing that wants to emerge.
Can I tell you this mind blowing thing that
Yes.
my mentor recently shared? So, those of you who probably know, I've been working with this wonderful female mentor. I'm in my third year with her now. Like, I've
Whew.
really like she's a really powerful mentor, female force in my life. Her name is Nana Leah Diamond. If you want to look her up, she's just absolutely wonderful human on the world. Um, she was telling me the other day about the idea of Mary, Mother of God, and we have this idea of her as the Virgin Mary. And she was talking about what if not only is that something that we're thinking in a very literal sense, but what if we are thinking about her as this high priestess who had gone back in her generations and in her ancestry, and she had purified her ancestry and her ancestral karma because there were prophecies of the birth of Jesus and like lineages before he came. And what if that seed got planted in those lineages and the women of those lineages, those and that ancestral line were working generation by generation to cleanse the karma, to clear the generational trauma so that by the time it came through Mary, she was a pure enough vessel to birth a child that was not here to clear their karma, but was here only for dharma. Literally a human being that was born only for sacred purpose. Like, I am here for what I'm here for. And there's no family stuff, like there's nothing else to work out. It's pure purpose driven life. And that the representation, perhaps another representation or way of thinking about that story is when we purify ourselves, when we let go of, you know, the stories we have made, when we do that purification process, we actually allow ourselves to be available, these clear vessels for the dharma, for the purpose, for the things that we're actually here for to come through us, because we're not busy going, I got to spend my time cleaning up my thoughts and doing my mantras and doing, because like that work is done. I am an open vessel. Until now I've been this. Today I am new, and I'm willing to see myself as new. I'm willing to see myself, fresh and innocent in this moment. And maybe from there it gets a lot easier to live from the heart, because the heart can just be that lighthouse that guides everything.
Yeah.
That a fun way to think about that?
Oh, it's so great. It makes me think like every day waking up and thinking I am brand new. I am brand new. This day is brand new. Something brand new is living through me. And, I think that the cool thing about meditation is we get to see our thoughts come up. So you can kind of see when that old karma starts to, pop up and say, it's the old stuff. I'm knocking at the door. And then being able to see it and love it and go, yeah, but something new is happening.
Mhm.
Something
And
new is
sometimes
happening
I
today.
think it is as simple as, like, you can hold one with each hand.
Hmm.
Like, "Oh, there's the stuff I carry around." I'm just keeping my heart and the door open for something else as well. Not saying this is the only gig in town. This isn't the only project I get to work on. Like, how about this? If you're devoted to your multitasking, how about you get to keep it? But let's multitask on the internal plane. Where it's like, all right, I got some stuff over here I'm working out, and then I've got on wonder over here, and then I've got a door of possibility over here. I'm just gonna be open to all of them.
Yeah. And willing to forgive, let go of resentments, let go of the past, as I forgive myself so
Yeah,
that I can be
absolutely.
new. Yeah.
Yeah. And it can be a really powerful thing, especially at an end of the year. We're coming into some of the darkest days of the year. We're coming into the end. We're coming into a rebirth cycle. We're coming into a new year. So it feels like this is a really powerful moment to have a conversation about what would it look like to show up with fresh eyes, heart open. As they say in skydiving, if you look down, you're never going to jump. So you can't look down. You have to look up, you have to open your heart, and you have to fall heart forward.
Mm. And on that note, may we all embody the highest and best as we look up with our heart open and meet each day with awe and exploration because something new is happening. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for being committed to showing up for your dreams.
If you would like to know more about what we are up to or find more information about our podcasts, upcoming retreats, or anything else, please go check out our website, www.thecreateseries.com.
And you can come and jam with us on Facebook. I know we're still on Facebook. We have a Create community page, and that's Create C.R.E.A.T.E.E.
And if you want to check us out on Instagram, you can find me, Natalie, at Miss Natalie Roy.
And you can find me at Hangy Love. That's HANGGILOVE.
Keep on rocking your dreams, and we can't wait to connect with you more.